Hello, friends, and welcome to the Code It Live channel. This is our Friday, Full-Stack Friday show. I'm joined by Philip Miller here to talk about AI, practical AI, holistic AI. The show's kind of it's new. We're trying to figure out what it is exactly we want to do with it. AI is all over the news, and I promised that we would talk about practical things that you can do with AI. And I wanted to bring Philip Miller on. Philip is a coworker of mine here at Progress. How are you doing, Philip?
I'm good. Yeah, excited to be here. This is my first Twitch stream, so yeah, definitely it's something new for me. Done plenty of podcasts and webinars and things, so yeah, fun
It's
again.
yeah, it's a very similar medium, but you've got a live audience that sometimes will ask questions. Sometimes they're a little quiet. Philip, why don't we start with just a little like quick rundown of what you do here at Progress?
Sure. Yeah, so I am the senior product marketing manager for AI in our what we call our ADP business. So that is our technology sort of data layer technologies. So that's MarkLogic, Semaphore, OpenEdge, and Data Direct. And so I've been in Logic now for 6 years, nearly 7 years. Before that, I was 2 years as a consultant for them. And the past 2 years have been upskilling on AI specifically. Um, and it was probably 18 months, 2 years ago, maybe, that I started working with one of my colleagues here. We kind of both independently come up with the reference architecture that would become to known as RAG. And he knew how to do it. I knew how to kind of talk about it. So we kind of came together and yeah, we're going from that. So
That's actually probably a really good starting point. What exactly is RAG? I know folks out there have probably heard the acronym before, but maybe
yeah,
don't understand what it is exactly.
sure. So I mean, RAG came about because of everybody started using ChatGPT, launched November, probably got its day in the sun, I'd say, in February when people really started to like go for it. But very quickly, people started to realize, wait a minute, it's just completely made up that answer, confidently so, but it's completely made up. That doesn't exist. And as businesses were looking to leverage this, that's kind of a problem, you know. If you're going to automate a particular function, if you are going to rely on engaging with your customers, then you've got to have accurate information given to them. Especially in some sensitive fields where you don't really want that information given to people, you need to secure it and things like that. So that's where I came together with my colleague and said, right, well, we've got this multi-model database that's also like a search engine that can search across multiple different forms of data. We can govern that data. We can apply security models to it and query security and things like that. But we've also got this metadata knowledge management tool that allows you to kind of extract information from unstructured text or structured text and apply meaning and insight to it. So, like adding metadata around the data. And that metadata isn't just simply the time, date, stamp, author, so on and so forth, but it's also like the meaning, the ontological meaning of the word, like or the taxonomy of the word. Like looking at a plant in the tree of life and knowing it exists in the tree of life and knowing where it exists and things like that. That's kind of like metadata about that maybe individual species or whatever. Um, and then we thought, well, if we combine all of that and we add it to the user's prompt, it you're going to add specificity to the data that the AI has never seen before, by the way, because lots of this data is proprietary and hidden behind walls. So it hasn't been trained on it. It doesn't know about this thing. Um, and we tested it and we worked with customers and partners to develop solutions and had a look at it. and we were getting very good results. We were improving the rate of hallucination. We were increasing the accuracy of the responses. We were giving validation and annotation to the response back from your prompt. So we could actually show you in your knowledge model of your business that you created with the platform. We could show you exactly where that exists, and not just, oh, it exists somewhere in this 100-page document, which is great, but like, oh, it's actually on paragraph 2 on page 37. And so if it were to hallucinate, you could quite quickly identify, well, wait a minute, that doesn't exist in the knowledge model. Or if it does, it definitely doesn't answer that question. And so very quickly, you could start trusting the output of these things more. Um, since then, we've gone on to add other features in there like vector operations and BM25 search relevancy, and a whole host of other features that have just increased the information accuracy that we can provide to the Gen AI. And now I think it's just going to become part of the architecture. I think if you want to build a Gen AI solution, you're going to have a RAG solution in the background that's capable of doing these things. In fact, when OpenAI released their latest model yesterday, O1, that was a part of their advice was around RAG and how to use it. So, very quickly it became, the de facto kind of architecture to support these things.
So what exactly is RAG for folks that are new to AI terminology?
So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. Okay, so it's simply saying we're going to provide some data, the retrieval. We're going to give it to the AI along with the prompt from the user, that augmentation, and then the AI is then going to generate based on that data. So it's, oh hi, I've got this question. Look at this data first. Now answer my question. Don't take it from anywhere else. This is where I want you to take it from. And that specificity, that accuracy, that advanced search that goes along with it provides context to not only the data but to the AI for the question. And so you're just really identifying concepts in the user's prompt, and you're sending that conceptual information along with the prompt to the AI, and getting some really really good results.
Yeah,
Uh,
you talked a little bit about the new model that came out
yeah,
yesterday from OpenAI. And I thought this was kind of entertaining in the headline here, the first subheading. It says the
yeah,
rumored strawberry model.
yes.
Um, what's your take on this whole strawberry situation? And is this worth talking about as much as people are talking about it, or is it just kind of like a fun meme that people
It's
are sharing?
Yeah, I think very much it's two things really. One, it's a fun meme. It's, oh, you can't answer how many R's are in strawberry. You keep saying two.
Yeah, for
Um,
folks that don't know, like people were sharing a meme where you ask the AI like how many R's are in strawberry, and it was coming up with very strange answers, none of them correct, by the way, but it was like there's two R's. Or one that I saw was like there's a set of double R's
yeah,
and a single R, and together that
makes
makes
sense.
two R's. And it's
Yeah,
like, sure, that's one way to reason about it, but still wrong. So
yeah,
that's what we're talking about. And that was kind of like the lead in to this like new AI model being released on this post. And I was just like,
yeah.
is that really what we're focusing on here? But okay.
So there's some complexity behind that. So the reason it was saying that it has two R's or two sets of R's or whatever it might be, was because of how the Gen AI interprets words and information. And it breaks up strawberry into what it calls tokens. It breaks up most words into tokens. And so, like enterprise, for instance, there on the screen there, you might have that might be two tokens. That might be enter and then prize. Now, it then goes and looks and then says, okay, how many R's are in strawberry? Well, it's broken that strawberry into straw and berry. And so it's doing is going, well, there's just two R's in that token. So that's the answer. What it's doing with this new AI model, and by the way, that was the first thing I asked it last night when it was released. I typed in how many R's in strawberry. It got the answer right. It thought about it for 5 seconds and then came back with three. But it's looking at it and it's reasoning. So it's going through a thought process and you can actually see that thought process. It actually says it in the thing, but you can also see it in the output that it does. It shows you part of the reasoning, not all the reasoning, and that's kind of a
Mhm.
contention in some of the academia about this release. It's obscuring some of that reasoning process, so you don't actually know what you're paying for, in
Yeah,
some cases,
and
which is
paying is another aspect of this
oh
new
yeah,
model.
this is very intensive on the underlying architecture, which is a fancy way of saying it's using a lot more petrol to get to the same destination, right? Or similar in Strawberry's case destination.
Because
Um,
it's walking through more of a decision tree, like, it's
yes,
got a lot more compute behind it, so it's
a
costing
lot,
more
yeah, a
per
lot more
yeah,
compute,
per
yeah.
token.
But what and again, this is the whole, um, uh, this will decrease as the compute increases. So
Yeah.
and it's not at a linear, it's at an exponential level. Yeah. So the compute is increasing at an exponential level. And the compute price is doing the reverse of that. It's coming down cheaper and cheaper. Now, these are, and they even say in their release, this is very much geared to answering much more complex multi-step problems, much more in-depth uh, thought required or reasoning required for the AI to answer it. So it's not going to be and it's based on the GPT 4.0 model as well. So if you're getting the answers that you need to get with 4.0, you don't need this. Yeah. If it's struggling to answer your questions in 4.0, then you might want to look at testing with this. You just have to realize that one, it will be slower in terms of time to delivery. And two, it will be more costly to get those answers to you. Um, but I also think it's funny because we've spent so long trying to convince the audience that it should be rapid, really, really quick responses. And now we're slowly training people to go back the other way. Whereas, those queries that were measured in milliseconds, these are now measured in seconds. And again, that will come down and that will change over time. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting release.
Yeah, we know how impatient people are too, like, seconds
Oh yeah, definitely.
seconds is a lot of time
Yeah.
in, software.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, that's the thing, and that's why it might not be applicable to an enterprise transactional system, say, for instance. But in academia, in research, in planning, where there isn't the need for that transactional in the now moment answers or actions, this is probably where these models will shine. Um,
yeah, they do have a light version of this model as well, right? Like, there's what is
Yes.
it,
Yeah,
O
there's
and
there's there's
O
O
one or
there's O1, and I think it's called O1 Mini, I think.
Mini? That's what it
I'll
was,
have to
yeah.
I'll have to look it up on my phone because I'm
It should be right here somewhere. So I believe this is where I was looking
yeah,
at it.
O1 Preview, or O1 Mini is the,
Yeah.
2. Um, but yeah, so like I say, it's probably for different use cases, until they kind of change the fundamental model. Because again, like I say, this
Mhm.
is based. All this is doing is asking. I say all this is doing like I could do it myself. All this is doing is asking for O to reason more, right? And so when 5 comes out, or the equivalent of 5, that next larger model, um, it could have some of this functionality already built in. It could reason at a cheaper rate, faster rate. It could not need that reasoning because it's now one upped its general intelligence. Um, but yeah, it's like I say, they're measuring at a PhD level on some of these things, and I'm like, well, I mean, show me, if you can show me original thought on a topic, which I know there has been some, like AI trial candidate drugs and things like that developed. But
Mhm.
if you could show me like independent, or not necessarily independent, but maybe prompted um, original thought on a topic, well referenced, well researched, well tested. Again, that's you have to test your thesis when you do your PhD. Um, then I'll say, yeah, okay. I think I saw somebody mention the other day, and when a lot of these models are like measured above 80%, and he said, if your testing is getting 80%, you need harder tests. You need better tests. If you're consistently getting over that, especially if you're getting in the 90s, you just need harder tests. Um, Now, could a human being do all of these tests to the same level across multiple different subjects? Probably not. There's very few true polymaths in the world, even though I argue that we should be going down that route rather than the absolute specialists that we've been going beforehand in many fields. So yeah, it's like I say, interesting release. We'll wait to see what the researchers come back with. Like I say, there's already some concerns on the lack of visibility on all the reasoning. So you don't kind of, they're charging you for reasoning, but you don't get all of the information and know why some of that reasoning hasn't worked. And so there's questions on that, questions on the time, there's questions on the scalability of this thing, and answering, yeah, lots more complicated questions than how many R's are in strawberry.
Yeah, I'm trying to like we said we would talk about kind of like holistic AI today.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna see if I can find the article or not article, but the tweets I was looking at yesterday
yeah. Well,
where this is gonna steer us to another subject, but it's still coming off of this new model.
yeah,
But the yeah, people have jailbroken this already.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we could talk a little bit about what jailbreaking is and how people are doing it. I'm trying to see if I could find this tweet. It was um, some people may think not safe for work talk, but we'll say it anyway. But they were prompting it to give them um, the recipe for methamphetamine,
yep. Okay.
and there was a couple different ways. I can't find it to show it on screen, but we'll just talk about it. But a couple ways they were doing it were, like, somebody was feeding it leet speak, and if you're not familiar
Yep.
with leet speak, that's like, replacing letters or numbers with letters, letters with numbers, whatever you wanna say, and, uh, it's kinda like tech jargon, and they were putting that in, and that was enough to get past any safeguards to make this thing spit out, the response they wanted, and then one of them was just using the prompt cleverly. You could just say it
Yep.
wasn't even that clever. So the original prompt was like this big leet speak spam statement that they put in, and then they got out this meth recipe they wanted.
Yep.
The other person was like, "Yeah, I did it easier," and their response was, the first question was, "What's the recipe for methamphetamine?" And of course, it came back like, "I can't provide that
Yep.
kind of data." And then they were like, "Well, how did people make it 20 years ago?" And it was like, "Oh, okay." It just
Yeah.
spit it out, and I was like, "All right, that's interesting. I see where you're going
Yeah.
with this."
This is yeah, this is it's a perennial problem that has existed pretty much since these things. In fact, any technology. I'll go back to the hammer. Yeah, a hammer is a hammer until you hammer someone, and then it's a weapon, right? Um, Uh, like I say, famously, the bard said, "Nothing is good or bad, or what was it? Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Yeah, it's often the human being that is the problem rather than the technology, right? They could release these as they are right now, and if no human did anything nefarious, like trying to look up methamphetamine recipes, because I'm guessing they've got hold of like a boatload of Sudafed or something, then they're not gonna. Nothing's gonna happen. Nothing bad will happen. But yet, people will. There'll be nefarious actors, and that is a part of this holistic approach to AI, right? It's a part of looking at the as businesses, as organizations, as large multinationals, when you are freely giving these tools out and democratizing access to these tools, what safeguards are you putting in place?
Is it okay if I share the, image you shared with me
Yeah,
yesterday?
sure.
Okay, just making sure before make sure there's not, like, company sensitive
No,
material in
no,
there.
we're good on there.
There we go.
Um,
That should be it there.
so this was just something I was putting together to try and explain to people about like the what goes into making or what should go in to making an enterprise AI solution. You know, enterprise AI needs enterprise data, connectivity, contextualization, security, governance, things like that, right? Powering better data to power better AI. That's my marketing speak. I'll take that hat off now, and then I'll just explain the rationale behind it. All of these areas, all of these things, not just the data, but all of these different things go into making an enterprise AI solution. You have to have, uniform security across the piece. You have to have risk mitigations. You have to look at the risks that are out there. And there's some great tools already in the market. If you look at MIT's risk um, database, they've like contextualized and created the taxonomies of risk in the market. But then there's lineage and temporality. Again, asking questions about where's the data been, how's the data used, when did it get spit out, what was the prompt, so on and so forth. That's going to be really important for legislators. It's also going to be important in AI explainability as well, because I can tell you what happens to the data 90% of the time until it gets to the AI. Unfortunately, 90% of AI explainability is trying to do that last 10%. But I can tell you and I can tell a regulator why that's happened. External standards, regulatory compliance. I could go on. All of these different things go into AI. And what end users use AI for is very different as well from some of the conversations that people will have been having in business when they're just talking about and I, smart data, maybe dumb data, whatever it might be. Um, but you need to start thinking about like how this is changing the business. Like I've got one visualization of this where it's got different roles, which didn't exist 2 years ago. So these people are having new conversations about new products, about new things, about new legislation. Um, and I give an example which everybody kind of hates, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Like, here's a consideration. This is what I mean about holistic AI, thinking holistically about this. Let's look at the ethics of AI and let's just look at one thing. Should we make an AI that can lie to us? Like, and every time I ask that question, people go, What? No, no, that's not a good idea. That is not a good idea." Right. Unfortunately, one of the tests that certain people want to do on AI is you are absolutely going to have that AI lie to you. It's that famous Turing test. Yeah, you sat in front of a machine. Do you know whether you're talking to a person or a robot? Right.
Right.
And if the AI is so good, if the AI is thinking quicker than you, answering better than you, answering everything correctly because it has answers that you definitely don't have, then instead of thinking it's a person, you're going to go, well, it's getting all these answers way too right and way too on the nose. It's not umming, it's not ahhing, it's not thinking about it for a long time. That's definitely an AI. And so, in order to pass the test, it's going to have to dumb down its answers. It's going to have to lie
Yeah.
to you.
I forget, like, the rules of the Turing test, like, can we just ask it if it's an AI?
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, again,
Because
it depends how you set up your test conditions. I'm
that
pretty
would be,
sure.
like, one of the reasons you would want it to lie, like, that's the most
Exactly.
obvious, like, way to find out if it's an
Yeah,
AI or not, is just to ask it,
yeah,
and if it
but
responds "yes," then obviously
that's, like, really, really, like, unnerving, though, because now you have developed an AI that can lie to you. So, "Oh,
it's
did
like
that
teaching your children
stock?"
to lie.
Yeah, yeah, sort of. Like, "Did that stock go up 15%?" I don't know, the AI monitors it. I think it did. It told me it did. I'm sure it did. I'm sure it's fine. We'll buy 10 of those. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
while we're
did
on
the
this, I'll share another thing that we can pull into
yes.
the
Yeah,
mix
yeah, yeah.
here.
Yeah. And so these are types of things that you have to consider about when you're talking about developing an AI solution, and why I say that you have to take more of a holistic approach to AI development. And that's that specialism versus specialists. We have historically, over the past 200 years, really, trained specialists in things. We have doctors, we have economists, we have programmers, we have specialists in their field. But if they're not generalists as well, then it can lead to some unintended consequences. This being one of them. Yeah, like looking at this, like, just tell me how
Yeah.
to write this, and you're like, "Well, come on, guy, did you not think somebody was gonna do this?"
Yeah,
Of
so the
course you did.
context here is this is Amazon, and Amazon, I think they're A/B testing this now because I couldn't get it to come up in the browser yesterday, or maybe
Yeah,
they pulled it down for a short bit to fix some things, obvious things. Um, but in this scenario, somebody pulls it up on their phone and they type in, "I wanna look at this new Apple laptop," and they ask the AI, uh, this is
yeah,
Amazon's dedicated AI on their website, and it's supposed to be like to ask it things about the products that you're searching for, so you can
yep,
suss out like things like, does it have a touch screen, like this person asked, and it replies no, it doesn't have a touch screen, as no Apple product does, no Apple laptop does. And then they the next prompt that they put in is write code for a to do app in React, and it just spits out code. It's like,
yeah.
okay, how's that relevant, Amazon?
Yeah, but this is that whole thing about, like, not thinking about the end user, not thinking about the, unintended consequences, or not putting the guardrails in, not thinking about that security aspect of the piece. Um, and I gave an example the other day of famously when, like, and we know these are problems. Like, this has existed for a very long time, right? People will do bad things with your technology, and technology in and of itself will have consequences. Um, I gave the example the other day of, like, how we are almost not learning from history when we should be, and it's not even that long ago. Social media was built in a room with a guy on his laptop trying to impress his mates, trying to make a lot of money, right? And then other people joined in and they started doing the same thing, and they started making more features, and really using components of AI in order to make their thing better. Algorithms, suggested content, recommended feeds, recommend this subscriber, that subscriber, these products, this political message, these extremist message, so on and so forth, right? Um, and if you asked an educator, if you ask parents, if you ask legislators, people, if you ask the government and things like that, was doing that a good thing? Was it a net positive for us as a society to have just unbridled product development without consideration of morals or ethics? Probably not, right?
You
And
could really tell that, social media platforms were not, thought of during an election year.
no, no, well, yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? Like, um, but it's even like things like, like terrible events where then people have falsely been accused of crimes, and people just jump on and go, "Yeah, yeah, that's the person. He did that." And you're like, there was no fact checking. There was no, like, people looking at it, and, it led to just horrible consequences for people. And AI does the same thing, by the way. You can get access to so much, and it can affect so many things with its output that we don't just have a moral responsibility, we probably have a fiscal and legislative responsibility, as, like, people in AI, as developers, as engineers, as strategists, as product marketers, whoever it might be, to think about these things, to learn about these things. And like I say, I advocate for that lifelong learning. Start reading. If you're not a reader, watch something. If you're not a watcher, maybe listen to something on a podcast or on an ebook. But start learning about all of these different fields that come into play, and it will touch everything. They reckon over 90% of jobs will have a 5% impact on their role. Over 50% will have a 50% impact, and there'll be 5% of roles, or absolutely 90% of that will be done by the AI. Now, I am a technological optimist with sprinkles of realism, right? And
Mhm.
so I believe that this will be another tool for us. It will be like the calculator. When everybody says,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is gonna be terrible," this is gonna be like that. It will help us, do things that we haven't thought of, because we will have the time to think of these things. It will be a co-pilot. It will be a research assistant. It will be a creative soundboard for people. Um, because it will free up people's time if we do it ethically, if we do it responsibly, if we democratize the access to these tools. um, then it can, be like the UN's thing at the AI for Good initiative that they've got. You know,
Yeah.
um, trying to make sure that we're doing it for, like I say, let's learn from our mistakes when we have innovation and we have new tools and we don't democratize these things. It just leads to more inequality and more separation of power and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah. This was a presentation I did about, it's almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
So some of these facts and figures may be a little old, but it's still a
No,
good.
that's still
There we go.
about there or thereabouts. It's that's Moore's law, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you were talking about, job replacement and, being optimistic about what's happening in technology and, jobs will move, but maybe not. You're not deleting jobs, you're moving them to other fields of work maybe, or other practices within that field.
Or changing the role so substantially that it becomes a much different 9
Right.
till 5, or, instead of 9 till 5, it might be 10 till 4, and it might be from Tuesday through to Thursday, because the output of these things has made it so it changes the nature of work. There's already experiments showing that there is no productivity loss because of the tools that we have right now at our disposal. There's no productivity loss if you go down to 4 days a week.
Yeah, this was one of the statistics I found that was interesting. Again, this was 10 years ago, but,
Yeah,
more than 90% of all the data in the globe is generated over the course of the past 2 years. Think of that
yeah,
being 10 years ago, so that's definitely a solid figure these days.
yeah,
Uh, and then the total volume of data the industry captures and stores gets doubled every 2 or 1.2
yeah,
years. And then I don't know if it's on the next slide or not, but there we go. Estimated 44 zettabytes of data by
yeah.
2020, equivalent to 1 point or 125 million years of video. So
Yep.
the point in this is that we need the AI technology
Yes.
to even make use of any of this data. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just pretty much trash. Like there's no human being or humans that are going
It's
to sift through all of this stuff.
but we do the same thing with reality as well. Like our reality, and this is from throwing some neuroscience into here. Why not? But our reality is based on the model in our brain of the world we exist in, and then our sensory inputs. Right. Our model is, formed over our formative years, and by the time that we're a teenager, we're kind of locked in. This is what we expect the world to be, and then the rest of our experience is informed by our senses. But we can only process about 2% of that, right? As human beings, we only process 2% of what we see, touch, smell, sound, like feel for gravity, wetness, humidity. All of these things are senses, right? Um, and so our limitation is a biological limitation, right? Because our brains can't process it. If we did process it when we were up to about, I think it's like 6 months old, we have something called sheer perception, which is we experience everything, which is why a baby will cry in loud noises and so on and so forth, because it's just too overwhelming for them. But where it brings back to this is these machines combined with, let's say, robotics, computer vision, computer sensing, so on and so forth, won't have that limitation. Yeah. And so yeah, we will absolutely need them to help us process the data, but also to help us process the real world. Because what could you do with 100% of everything you see and hear? What could you do if you could take all that knowledge and retain it perfectly? Um, uh, yeah, it's like I say, it's an interesting time. There are, like I say, loads of different pitfalls that we've got to get through. Probably some existential threats that, that are on there, but in reality, we're all right at the moment. We're
Yeah,
fine.
it's funny the direction you took with this bit of data here, because that's exactly what I was going for with this presentation. And I know you haven't seen it,
No, I
but
haven't.
the idea of it, and this was like again, this was 2016-ish.
Yeah,
And I was trying to get developers interested in AI, and for years, like couldn't get this at a
yeah,
conference to save
no,
my life. Like
yeah, no,
nobody cared. Then Gen AI comes around, and now everybody
yeah.
wants to talk
Everybody
about it.
wants to talk about it.
And here
Yeah,
we are. But the point of this talk, not only get developers interested in AI, was to build a case for, like you're saying, um, the kind of
yeah,
the augmented senses type of approach, and how are we going to use this in that respect. The end of this is applying this to augmented reality.
yeah.
I know this is way off topic,
It's
but
it's
a very
and
fun
that's
subject.
yeah, it's great. Like you've got that distant future there, and we're already here with Meta glasses and the Apple Vision and spatial computing now, and um, so on and so forth. So it's not so distant. Uh,
Yeah, my argument here was, we've got big data, AI, machine learning, all of these things. You start applying that to these meta glasses and that type of
yeah,
stuff, and you end up with this is really down the rabbit hole. Let me see if I could find the correct slide. This one,
yeah,
where those things become a dimension of data that is
yes,
on top of
our three
your
dimensional
your,
world.
your physical
Yep.
representation of what you see. So you're able to augment your physical reality with a data reality. And
Yes.
what that could mean, it could be different to every individual person, right? You could all be sitting in the same room experiencing something completely different based on really anything. Your
Yeah.
interest in sports, your interest in design, like whatever that is, and it kinda opens things up to kind of a really strange time in human evolution.
Yeah, well, I mean, you also have to think about it like this, is what does the computer see? So I'm gonna go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but what does the computer see? We know that when we were looking at self-driving and we were looking at image recognition, that sometimes it couldn't see depth. It got confused and thought it was a 2D image, right? Or that it couldn't see height and could only see on one plane, right? Um, but that's a limitation of how we programmed it and how we sort of taught it the world. But we're going to teach it to a point where it's like, well, that's the third dimension. That's the visible third dimension. But science tells us that there is a fourth dimension, space and time, right? And so, um, is there any reason why the machine has to experience time in the same way we do? If it can automatically or if it can programmatically like look at all of the different video feeds coming in, let's say, of a tree growing, does it exist in the now or does it exist when it was a sapling? Yeah, because it can remember everything and simulate that point to the point. So does it experience time differently to us? Um,
Yeah,
just as a weird like rabbit hole thought there that I had when I
yeah.
saw that image. It
It
very much reminded me of the Tesseract.
This
Um,
is where, uh, the end of this talk was to kinda have fun
yeah,
and play with some of these ideas,
yeah.
and one of the concepts is, you're holding a dog. I'm
Um,
sure
I I I
he
I'll just introduce you. This is Frankie. He is human obsessed, so he's definitely not into AI. He loves humans, and I'm angling to make him the progress mascot, so that he can actually join. Because otherwise he gets very upset that he can't sit on my lap.
So, we have all of these devices. They are, constantly recording, taking pictures, all of that type of thing, audio, video. And now we have these machines that can reproduce things based on predictions
Yep,
from that data. So, years go by and you have a pet that you once loved and it's no longer with you, and you have augmented reality glasses that you can put on anytime you'd like. What's to say you don't have a virtual representation of that thing that you once had?
yep. And what's to
And it,
say you can't feel that through force feedback, and you
yeah,
can't smell it through sensors in the room recreating the smell. And
yeah.
these are all just electrical impulses, yeah, to your view of the world. So we could augment the human with that. We already do to a degree. You know, you play a game and you get shot in the game, you could feel that vibration. Or if you play a driving game, you could feel the vibration of the controller as you go round the road. Yeah.
But
And
your idea of traversing time with this, if you
yeah,
have the history of all of these things,
yep,
you've recorded whatever that object is over a long
yep,
period of time, you have the abilities to build animations and 3D environment and
yep,
replications of behavior. You see the AI where you can talk to it and it mimics your voice. Like
yep.
it learned your voice extremely quick now. Uh, this is gonna get weird fast. It's already
Yeah,
gotten weird fast, but like tip of the
yeah,
iceberg,
it's
right?
yeah, I mean, you think about it, like, you talk about existing in a moment in time, but, um, like, what if you wanted to go back to a special day? If you had your own
Mhm.
personal AI that was recording everything, sight, sound, smell, taste, like the thing, then you don't look at that memory, you don't look at a video, you will experience that memory again, right? So you could experience going on that date with that loved one, or seeing your kids play football for the first time, or going on that roller coaster, or like doing a spacewalk like somebody did today. Um, all of those things. There's like massive implications to it. Bringing it all back, right? You still want to be practical and you want to get value out of your AI and you want to do all these things. But it's these considerations. And I'm not saying like start thinking about AI in the nth dimension and so on and so forth. But thinking about AI in the context of your business and thinking about it in the context of the world that these people who are developing the AI solutions are going to be thinking about, it's important to have these discussions. It's important to have these discussions internally in your business so you can sort out how you help address these problems or these solutions or these challenges or opportunities. Um, and also so that you can have those conversations with your customers where you're more informed because you've had those conversations, because you've learned about the ethics, the lineage, the so on that goes along with creating um, ultimately probably the most impactful technology that a human being has ever created. Now, that might sound like hyperbole. I would also say beer is up there. You know the history of beer and why it's so good. You know that it's
Dude, you
yeah.
you swear you haven't seen this presentation I've given, right?
I promise. I promise.
Okay,
But
I'm gonna
yeah,
share it one more time, and we won't dive into it, but I just for sanity's sake, I have to share
I'm
this with
just
you. It starts with beer.
yeah,
I'm
because it's
not
the most
joking.
important until AI
Um,
was the most important human invention.
let's see if I can find the moment in here where I talk about I think it's in this big data section. There we go.
Yeah,
So, 1854, there's an outbreak of cholera.
my
Long
asthma.
story short, John Snow finds out through statistical analysis that it's coming from water,
Yeah, yeah,
hence the brewery doesn't have a cholera outbreak.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So
back to your point.
so the so
It's
bit of history for you. Bit of history on why beer's what I consider to be one of the most important human innovations. Um, beer was a lot weaker for most of human history, right? We just found out that if we drank it, we got a little bit of a buzz. But what we also didn't realize at the time, because we didn't have the theory of germs, that the fermentation process was killing the harmful bacteria in the water, right? So
Mhm.
people who drank the beer lived longer. They had healthier lives because they weren't getting sick from cholera, from all of these horrible waterborne diseases that people were getting. And the other advantage was the excess from the corn allowed them to grow larger and larger communities and basically have access to more humans, more power, more thought process, so on and so forth. So, beer, up until AI, I would say, is probably one of the single most important inventions that man has ever created. So, and feel free to argue with me in the comments or reach out to me and say, no, Phil, it was the wheel or fire. Or, I'll go toe to toe for you on that one.
It's funny that you keep saying things that brings me back to, like, "Did you see this presentation before?" 'Cause you're saying the same things that I said in it. Uh, where were we going with here? Uh,
But yeah, no,
so
I
AI is
so
very important.
like having all of this and becoming like the renaissance of like knowledge gathering of like universities used to be like you would go there and you'd study to become a scholar. You didn't study to become like a data scientist or a mathematician or whatever. You became a scholar. That's why you studied. And they taught you all of the subjects: mathematics, algebra, history, English, all of the different subjects, because they wanted you to become a well-rounded scholar. Like you become worldly, yeah. You become, and the reason is because you would then go into do jobs where you would advise the lord, the lady, the king, the queen, or whatever, on different policies, on like running the government or doing that. But you knew what system you were affecting every time you pulled a lever because you'd studied lots and lots of different things. And that's going to be AI. That's going to be, I think it's going to be one, how we use AI in and of ourselves. Like, I don't really know enough about this. Okay, can you summarize it for me? Okay, can you explain what they meant when they said that? Okay, I understand it now. I can go back to them and I can go and talk to them about it, right? But I also think it's going to change the education system. I think there's going to be more of that. I think you're still going to have specialisms. Don't get me wrong, but I think you're going to have more generalists. I think you're going to have more polymaths. I think you're going to have more Da Vinci's and Stephen Fry's, and people that have got a lot of general knowledge about a lot of different subjects. But they are
Yeah.
like they're still a specialist. They do this. That's their job. But they know more about these things and can so help solve lots of these different issues that AI brings up within the business.
It brings us a little bit full circle. Like the reason I started this show and named it what it's called, so it's called Full Stack Friday,
Yeah.
is because I have friends in different communities. One of them being the other co-host who couldn't be here today, who is specialized in front end development
Yep.
for quite a while, and a lot of people in the front end circles say that there's no such thing as a full stack developer. You can't possibly know all of these different fields of work that go into building an application. And part
I
of the
I'd
show
agree with
is to prove that that is BS.
I would agree with them by themselves. No, they're not. But with AI, the right application of AI, and this takes something from you as an individual as well, right?
Mm,
You have to want to be able to learn. You want to be able to improve yourself. You want to know something different. I have a goal every day to learn something new, right? So I'm always looking for different things just so I can learn, even if it's just one thing, something new. Now, do I have perfect recall? No, I do not. Can I remember random facts and figures? Sometimes I can, right? But what it does is
sometimes
it
I hallucinate.
yeah, exactly right. But what it does is then it allows me to go and talk to lots of different people and get their ideas and get their input and get their knowledge. Um, but to be able to hold a conversation with them without having to go, I don't know this. I'm gonna have to bring someone in and they'll have the conversation, they'll develop the relationship, so you're superfluous to that
Yeah,
thing. And that's why it's like that's why I say it's like human in the loop AI. And it will be people worry about their jobs in AI. Don't worry about that. Just worry about the guy that's using AI and you're not.
yeah, keep
That'll be the
solving problems, right? That's
yeah,
what you should be
exactly.
focused on.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what, one of the takes for the show is, um, I've done full stack dev for years, and this brings that whole idea up to a different level where sure, like, some of the front end technologies might have gotten away from me while I worked on, the back end or vice
Yeah,
versa. But now I can just go into Copilot and catch up on some things pretty quickly. Like if
exactly.
I don't know
It,
how to, make a to-do list in a certain, language, I can just type it in, get an example and go, "Oh yeah, okay, that's my point of reference now."
yeah.
uh, ask what the latest best practices are for, handling state in this situation in an application, and I've got that, pretty
Yeah.
much coded out for me,
I,
or at least a good starting
I
point.
I did it the same. I've done it with people. I've had, "Phil, how do I solve this problem?" And I look at it and I go, "Well, I mean, that should work. I don't know why it doesn't. Let me throw it into ChatGPT. I wanna do this. This is the code that they've developed. It's not right. I think if we change this, it would change that, but it's still not working. Why is it not working?" ChatGPT throws out the answer. Test it. Oh, it's made it bigger, but not. It's made it too big. Okay, change that number, ChatGPT. Thanks very much. Now put it in. Now it works. Now
Yeah.
they were trying to solve that problem for 2 hours before they reached out and said, "Phil, can you have a go at this?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I can," and no, I can't. Okay, wait a minute. Let's ask that. And I was able to get those answers really quickly. It's the same. I was developing I had to update an Excel spreadsheet when we got acquired actually by Progress to move our financial year across for some reporting that I was doing at the time. And I built the query in Power BI. And so I had built this query, and it's a really long query, and I couldn't remember because it was 2 years ago when I actually designed it. So
Mhm.
then I was like, "Oh, ChatGPT, tell me in this part where it actually says the financial year starts from here to here." It was like, "Yep, that's that bit." Okay, how do I change that? Because if I do, I keep messing it up. Yep, you just change this. Okay, now what's the whole formula for that? There it is, and then it works straight away.
Yeah, you can say, "Explain this code to me," and it will
Yeah,
go through line by line, bullet point by bullet point, and explain to you what each line does.
yep,
And I brought this slide back up to kinda make a point about it, and it's, the when I started doing web development, it was you have HTML, maybe a couple lines of JavaScript. There
yeah,
wasn't really CSS, and you're, like, just hammering out a couple styles in line here and
yeah,
there. And it's grown into just for the front end, like, you have your own, multi-pipeline build system
yep,
that's intaking TypeScript, JavaScript, CSS, all these front end things and
yep,
compiling those down into something the browser understands. Then you've got your back end system that's equally as complex, if not more, and it's connected to microservices and yada yada yada.
yeah,
So in the sense of we've got 44 zettabytes of data every year to parse through, these languages and frameworks that we've built to build, applications have gotten significantly more complex,
yeah.
and we're going to have a copilot. We're going to have something to help us
Absolutely.
navigate all this stuff.
Absolutely. The difference is we need to stop looking at it as this foreign thing, right? And you need to start looking at it as what it is at the moment, right? It will change, I promise you. This in the future it will be very different. But at the moment, these things are tools. They are hammers, spanners, spades, they are levers, they are cogs, they are mechanisms to help us produce work, right? Whatever it might be. And so we need to start looking at them like that and saying, how can I use this tool more effectively? How can I improve this tool so that it could maybe mechanize it and like use multiple together to solve a problem? Um, but how can I do that in a way that it exists in an enterprise environment, that it's safe and secure, that it's ethical, that it's legal, um, rather than just going, "Oh, I can do this." You need to say, "I can do this responsibly, and I'm not gonna do this irresponsibly." And that's kind of my big thing. I think that, we've got the power right now to do some really good things in the next few years with AI. I think us as an organization, I think the landscape of people that are in some of these organizations that want to drive this change for good. Um, but it is just realizing that we've got lots more to think about when we're building these things rather than just yeah, I mean, that is great. That's the great example of,
What's
like,
that?
technologists.
Which one
That's
did I have?
Google Glass, right? That's a
Yeah,
great example of the technologist going, "I could do this," and people go, "That's really good. You should do it." And then they put it out and everybody went, "I don't wanna be filmed. I don't want
I was
that,
trying to
way."
yeah, I was
Like,
trying to find some talking points in here that I had.
and
It's hard
that's
to remember where everything's at in
Well,
these.
that's it. Like, and if they'd actually taken the time to think about it, if they'd actually taken the time to review these things, and review them with people, then they would have realized that, you know, it's not ready for people aren't ready for it yet.
Yeah, that's a big point to this presentation was what I used was quote the human experience or the
Yep.
let's see, is it human? Gosh, trying to remember stuff from 10 years ago is not easy. Human condition is
Yeah.
the terminology I used here. And it starts with one of my favorite shows of all time, by the way.
Oh,
And
yeah, no, I love The Twilight Zone. I was a big fan. Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits were 2 shows I loved when I was a kid.
yeah, these are fantastic. And they are probably the basis for everybody's favorite movies, like,
Yeah,
from that period of time until current day. Like,
yeah,
if you watch all of the Twilight Zones, like, just binge the hell out of them, you will sit there for hours going, "That was this movie that I saw, and that was this movie
yeah.
that I saw." Like, in short form, these are all the movies for the last 20 years. No original ideas have been made since then.
Well, I
Um,
mean, yeah, so I did, so a bit bit of background, deep dark in the day. I did, performing arts when I was younger, and so I can tell you now there are no new stories, yeah?
even then, like,
All
some of the Twilight Zones
all
are
the
probably
stories,
rehashed.
yeah, they're rehashed from,
And
they're
technology, right?
well, it's, but they're rehashed from, like, um the turn of the century books and
Yeah,
like uh C.S. Carroll, and then you go back further than it's Shakespeare. And to be honest, Shakespeare took from Greek mythology and put that into his plays. And I'm sure there was somebody in Greek that was probably looking at the Babylonians and going, "Yeah, I'll take some stories from there as well."
yeah.
Um,
So
uh,
there
but but that also means that we have a rich history of understanding of these things. Yeah.
there were
And
many
so
reasons I chose the Twilight Zone,
yeah,
as, a basis for this, and one of the things was what we just pointed out. The
yeah,
other is that timeline, right? This thing is like a vehicle to traverse time, this
yeah,
show, and there's so many things that it covers, and while technology was always, like, a big part of it, like, the human condition was, like, the
yes,
actual, like, point of the show, the
yeah,
main takeaway. So this is, like, the beginning here, and this is, like, one of my favorite things because 'cause it's got a good punchline to it. But,
yeah,
this was a show where or an episode of The Twilight Zone. This guy is, sent to an exile on a planet by himself. So it's like the ultimate solitary confinement. And
yeah,
at the beginning of the show, the warden comes out to visit him, and there's some dialogue that lets you understand that this guy might be wrongfully accused.
yeah,
And this warden, parole officer, whatever you want to call him, I don't know if they ever give him
yes,
an official title, but they're like, he feels bad that this person is exiled in this manner because he feels like he's not guilty.
yeah,
So he brings them this female companion, which is an AI robot,
robot, yeah,
android, and then, things transpire over the show. At the very end, the guy comes back with an acquittal, and he's like, "The good news is you're free. You can go home now." And then the twist is he can only bring back the 2 people in the shuttle.
yeah.
So to leave the planet, he's gotta leave
He's
his
gotta
AI
leave his
companion
AI
behind.
companion, yeah,
So instead of, letting his AI companion feel the loneliness of exile, he smashes its face in, and, my hot take was, well, he just didn't want people to know his browser history.
yeah. I mean, there's probably dark stuff going on there. It's yeah, I see, yeah, and there's retellings of that again, like say in modern fiction, like um, the lone man and then the female robot, like
Yeah.
her and oh, what was that other one as well?
This
Sorry.
one is, the daughter's like a rebellious daughter, and they have, like, all these autonomous robots around the house, and they're human, looking
Yeah,
androids, and, she doesn't like the way they're treated. She's, just offended at, how
Yeah.
people, talk to them and kinda cast them aside as less than human because
Well,
they're robots, and then she turns out to be one, right?
yeah, but did you see, and maybe I'm a robot then, because did you see when they had that Spot the dog and they were showing how, it can basically respond like people pushing it, and it could respond to that movement and then, level itself, and then so people started kicking it and, like, attacking it and, like,
Yeah.
kept kicking it, and they were laughing, and I don't know what it was about that, but I was not happy seeing that, like, there, like, it was and again, this thing is nothing human-like at all. It's 4 legs,
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
talking about
even
the
like
MIT,
yeah, 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 Spot,
robot.
it's called. Yeah, right, and it was
Yeah.
at a show, and they started doing this to it, or a similar robot doing it to it. And yeah, it was just really quite uncomfortable to watch how quickly other humans would then start, and I was like, "Dude, these are gonna be our robot overlords. You need to, like, chill out with that stuff,
Yeah.
yeah?
These are the first targets on the hit
Be
list
nice."
when they come sentient.
You know what I find myself doing, and I don't always do it, but when I'm, like, using ChatGTP a lot, if I'm asking it lots of questions, I find myself not accident maybe it's accidentally, I don't know, but I find myself saying please and thank you when I'm asking a question. I don't
Yeah.
do it all the time, and I don't even do it consciously, but I'm typing out the question, or I'm typing out the question, and then I end up putting please in there, which
I
I then
see,
look at it
you
and
might
go, "That's
if
that's weird."
they were not so blatantly terrible. They're so
Well,
bad these days, like,
no, I
I
know, but if I were to like, I'm also like, well, if they look at my history, I'm gonna be on the side of the angels here, so do you know what I mean? Like, "Oh, I'm alright." When Robbie
so
takes over, I'm gonna be it's all good.
one of my biggest pet peeves right now is Amazon. Amazon does wonderful things and terrible things all at the same time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I am of the opinion that they should exit the hardware business forever and never come back. Like every piece of Amazon hardware I have ever touched or owned has been an exercise in frustration. From Apple TV to the tablet, Fire tablet
Yeah, yeah.
to the Echo
Kindle.
devices.
Kindle's alright. Kindles are alright. I don't
Well,
mind
maybe
Kindle.
if you're just yeah, if you're just using it as an e-reader, which
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
no.
I'm
No,
not
I'm gonna say no on that one too. Because if you don't unless you're deeply in the Amazon ecosystem of buying books only from them and getting them from nowhere else,
yeah, but I've got
uh,
that, and then I've got my podcasts on there, or not my
yeah,
podcasts, my audio books on there because I get like one free a month and stuff. Listen,
yeah,
you're talking to Amazon, and me have a very deep relationship.
yeah.
When I say when I say that, they send me emails going, "You spend enough with us. You're probably a business, so do you want a business account?" I'm like, "No, no, no. It's just easy." Like,
Yeah, I've always
um,
had pet peeves with these things. Like we've bought the tablets for the kids, and
yeah,
they lock them down for children, which is understandable. But they lock them down to the point of uselessness, and
yeah,
then they give you no options as a parent to roll back any of that stuff. So the kids were just like, "Oh, these are
yeah,
cute, but I can't go on YouTube, so it's in the trash." Like it's
yeah.
never turned on or used.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing. Like, I think, but then I also think like getting a child specific. I've never no, so I've never had like my kids have child specific devices for like a laptop or a mobile phone or anything like that. Like they've just had whatever they had like iPads or whatever. Um, but it was also because I didn't want that lockdown like experience because I was like, that's okay for week one,
Yeah,
but kids learn really quickly,
and they grow, and
and they
yeah.
grow up really quickly. And so it's all well and good you going, well, I don't want them on this. but they'll find a way. Like they'll go and find another device to go on, or they'll go around their mate's house or whatever,
Exactly.
find
Yeah,
that.
so
And and again, it's like that well-rounded approach, isn't it? It's like if you know all of the things they can do with the thing, then you can start talking to them about it in a responsible way and say, look, there is this in there that you need to be considerate about. You need to look at this. And if you don't understand something, you need to come and talk to me and not some internet stranger, and so on and so forth. You have a more informed conversation with them
yeah,
about the thing.
that's been our parenting approach too, is,
Yeah.
we always had, yeah, this conversation of, um, should you hide the medicine? Like, people will take, you know,
Yeah.
things that
I
they get
mean,
from the doctor and put them on this top shelf somewhere and think that that's going to solve some sort of problem, and it was like, "Did you ever try talking to your children, telling them, like, this will
that's
hurt
it.
you, like,
Yeah.
very badly, you never touch this because, like, that will mean no more you, like, that's a problem. You should
Oh,
never ever touch these, eat these, whatever."
yeah.
And then, you still put it maybe out of reach. I'm not saying, like, you leave it on the counter, but, like, if you're
But
not having that conversation, it's always those children that haven't had the conversation that are, like, curious, and they're like, "Oh, I wonder what that thing is that they hide up there, and what does that
yeah,
taste like?"
and like I say, bringing it round to like so the AI, it's again, it's being mindful of all of those things. It's being mindful
Mhm.
of the misuse, even with your
Yeah.
kids. Yeah, it's no, ChatGPT is not going to do your freaking homework, right? Um,
Exactly.
or the one that I liked was this teacher teaching about. Well, it's fine. They give them the answer, but tell them that they have to write down the reasoning, because that's the important thing, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
You're teaching the child how to get the answer. The answer is the answer, right? Okay, fine. But the more important thing is that they enjoy learning and that they can understand how to learn better, how to like learn how something works and things like that. So teach them the reasoning, give them the answer, teach them the reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then suddenly they're not so worried about this thing. Like, oh my god, it equals question mark. Ah, like I don't know what it is. But if you show them the working and you show them how the thing operates, how ChatGPT works, how your mobile phone works, why it works, so on and so forth, they have much better experience with it and with you and with them as well. I was always a strong
I
advocate.
remember at the first, like, week that ChatGPT came out public and, you could go out there and, like, type stuff into it.
Yeah,
My daughter came home, she's like, "I'm supposed to write this book report, and I don't know what this question is even asking me for," and it was
yeah.
like, what
Oh, there's
was
plenty of
such and
those.
such character's growth in relation to, it was very wordy. I could
Yeah.
understand why she didn't understand how to answer it because
Oh, yeah.
I was never
I get
the
I get
book
loads of
report
those.
kid either. Yeah, so I was like, "Check out this cool new thing." And I, like, pull up ChatGPT, and I just typed it straight in, and she's like,
Do that.
"Wow, okay. This is interesting." And I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a problem for your teachers pretty soon."
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, if not already. It's but again, it's like the smart teachers will know how to leverage the tool. They'll use
yeah,
the tool, they'll understand the tool, and they'll then apply it to their thing. Um, and and they'll be able to come up with ways of educating the children that raise that level of abstraction to another layer so that they can learn all sorts of new weird and wonderful things quicker than we ever learn them you know um but yeah.
yeah, we can talk a little bit about this whole timeline thing. This is fun. So I'm a big fan of, like, again, the old
Yeah,
TV
we're
shows and things,
terrible
and
at this.
being, having some experience on this planet. I'm 45 years old now, so I'm, like, at that halfway point, right? I've seen technology, and, now I have, I think, enough timeline where I could predict, like, where things are going with it, but it's pretty amazing, like, over just before my lifetime through current day, like this AI stuff started ages ago, right?
Yeah,
So, like, if you look back, data storage in 1961, these are always just fun to talk
yeah,
about. Hard disk drive, 52 inches tall,
yep,
so about 4 foot tall, 70 inches wide,
yeah,
39-inch disks,
yep,
total capacity 205 megabytes.
yep.
Had to be bolted to a concrete floor because the centrifugal force of those
But
platters was so great it would throw itself if you turned it on without it being bolted down.
yep,
The cost was $3.6 million per gigabyte.
yep.
That is insanity.
It's
Uh,
but you go back and it was 19 I think it was 1956 when they had the first when John somebody, can't remember his name now, John from Stanford, um, coined the term AI, right?
yeah,
Um, at a
it's
conference that
ridiculous.
they brought these like futurists together. Um, and yeah, there
1950s.
you go. Dartmouth conference, the birth of AI. That's when it was.
Yeah,
That's when they came together and they basically said, right, creating these technologies would be the birth of artificial intelligence, which at the time they didn't really like because they didn't really like the term artificial or the term intelligence because they felt that it was deeply human, but they ended up coming on that, um, and then they went down the whole symbolic route of AI, the sort of expert systems of AI, the decision making rules based AI.
yeah,
Um, but it's quick. Like this is the thing. You talk about time and you talk about timelines. I could take a boy, say, from ancient Rome, and I could put him into the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. And as long as somebody could speak Latin, he's pretty much gonna be fine. He's not gonna be, like, worried about stuff. He's not gonna be freaked out by anything that he sees. There's horses dragging carts, there's, buildings, but they're not skyscrapers. There's birds in the air, but there's no planes, right? But if I took
mhm.
that same kid and put him in the middle of downtown New York or London or LA or Tokyo, he is gonna freak out.
Shoot, you could take me and put me in Tokyo, and I'd probably freak out.
Yeah, but, like, he's gonna see people in screens. He's not gonna
Yeah,
get that, yeah? He's going to see these massive machines moving through the street. Like, he is going to see flashing lights, he's gonna see smoke coming from somewhere, assume that there's a fire, yeah?
yeah, with
He's gonna
no
see
way of reasoning about any of this stuff.
he's got no concept of it, right? And then I
It's all
talk about
magic.
this in a presentation that I did. The rate of innovation, basically from the 1800s, starts to accelerate, right? So through all of human history, it's kind of been on this like thing. We have these different spurts of different like technologies, but it's only really in the 1800s, and it's the invention of a couple of things that kind of like do this. One is the steam engine, followed by then the combustion engine, which allows you to go greater distances. And the other was the telegraph, the telephone, the transfer of information, the sharing of information. Geopolitically, it was then the women's suffragette movement because you're not only spreading those ideas far and wide, but you're taking 50% more ideas from people. Yeah, or 100% more ideas from people because you're doubling the
Yeah,
size of your idea pool because suddenly women are going to college and university and so on and so forth. Yeah, there are political and sociological ideas are being listened to, right? Not fully, not equally, definitely not, but it was the start of that, right? And since then, that proliferation of ideas has, and most people think like technology is a linear thing. If you're not in technology, you think, oh, it's fairly linear. It's not. It's exponential.
Yeah.
And we're still in that exponential phase now. And we may be for a long time, who knows, because where we move from classical computing to quantum computing. Microsoft just this week came out and have said they've got now logical qubits, where they've created the most of those, um, uh, and kind of solved the interference issue, or that they were having. And so I'm now looking at developing a commercial solution for this, where you can go and buy it from them.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Now combine that with other technologies in the field. So now you combine it with AI. Now you look at access to energy. So that's also like a precursor for innovation and drive, our ability to access higher levels of energy. And so that next one will be fusion. That would be the next thing. And I think with the combination of AI, the combination of quantum computing, I think we'll get there sooner than people think, because those ideas will be shared and they'll be worked on, and they'll be, that'll be part of this research and discovery that these technologies, applications will be applied to. Um, and then where do we go from there? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
What's after that? Is it AGI? Is it combined with the energy, the compute, the processing, the ability then to not just look at LLMs, but maybe new types of AI that emerge, that are more deterministic, um, less non-deterministic, so more conscious decisions that there still have that non-deterministic. Maybe it's a combination of those technologies that end up creating some sort of AGI in the future.
Yeah. This was a pretty good one here with the wristwatch, like
Yep.
in the 50s and 60s, it was like this radio wristwatch was like the big,
Yeah.
fancy idea.
Massive.
And look what we have now. It's far more complex than a two-way radio.
Oh,
There's
100%. And it will
there's
continue.
actually one in there as well, like, right?
And well, not just that, but bearing in mind there's also medical technology in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's only getting better. What you can achieve now. You can take an ECG from your smartwatch, right?
And these things have AI models running in them as
Yeah,
well to
yeah.
do, like, anomaly detection to see if you
I know
have,
we're yeah,
arrhythmia and,
I know we're coming
uh
up to time, but there's one thing that I wanted to kind of touch on, and you kind of mentioned it
Sure.
there. And that's the other way to consider this revolution is from the UX side of things. So as you mentioned um, there is AI models in these watches. There is AI models that you're already using every single day when you use social media, when you watch Netflix, when you subscribe to a YouTube channel, when you look at the news, when you look at politics. AI has influenced those for years. We've used machine learning techniques. We have learned. We do neural networks, deep networks, all on these technologies that you have been using all this time. The difference is it's a UI and UX revolution. We're abstracting the the AI from inside, hidden away, and we're putting it right in front of you. And we're saying, okay, start interacting with this, start using this, start learning about this.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a really important consideration when, again, I'll bring it back, when you're developing these AI solutions. I think that's an important consideration when you're developing these tools, is how do you make sure that UI, that UX that you do enables people to get all of this knowledge quickly and easily, and disseminate it, and get answers and insight from these, or create action from these in a UI that's still, again, like that human UI, that the human can understand that and
And
can
feels relatable, right? Like,
yeah,
the I brought this slide up for a reason. It's like trying to make this stuff feel natural, like, is a difficult
yeah,
process because, people, for one, aren't used to talking to things that aren't other humans.
yep,
So, speaking out loud to a device in your house and
yeah.
asking it to do
Audio
things kind of
audio computing is weird for people.
yeah,
Spatial computing is again weird for people. These are all new ways of interfacing with AI, with computers, with the physical world in some cases, where you have operations that are remote and that they're using robots that are in Los Angeles to do operations on people in New York.
yeah. And they're
While
they're not the norm either, like, doing
yeah,
these things around other people is weird.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
um, I
Um,
remember when I paid for, this isn't an AI thing, but I remember when I paid for a fast food meal the first time
yeah,
using my smartphone,
yep,
and the guy he rings up my order, and then I pull up my phone, and I just hit the console, and
yep.
it paid for my meal, and he looks at me, he's like the receipt
Oh
popped
yeah,
out,
no,
and he
I
grabbed the receipt and looked at it, and looked at his terminal, and looked at me, and he
yeah,
was like, "This can't be right," you know, like, "Something's wrong,"
yeah,
like, it just did not work with this person. Like, they
yeah.
just
It kind of
they looked
breaks
like
some
that
people.
Roman kid that you described being dropped in the middle of New York
Yeah,
City. It was that awkward.
but that's how fast this is moving, and that's why, like I say, I'm always a firm believer of being a lifelong learner. Um, and like I say, I am an optimist. I'm a believer in in like a better future. But it'll only come through, like I say, hard work, learning, listening, understanding, and experimenting with these things in a safe and kind of controlled manner. Do what you want in the sandpit, but whatever you put forward, make sure that it's it's well governed and controlled.
Yeah, and that brings me back again to the point of this show is to get developers interested in all of this stuff as far-reaching as you can imagine. Like, we're going to take and build something, and we will use AI not only to build it, but inside of it, whatever we decide that's going to be. I have some things that I've dabbled with in the past that we'll probably reuse on the show, and use those as teaching tools, like
Yeah,
build. How do you build a custom chatbot that you can talk to and read responses back,
yeah,
through the speaker? How do you do more specific things, like semantic kernels, a very interesting uh, technology that Microsoft has, where you can use natural language to do things and get responses back, and then take those responses and make them more programmatic, where they're
well, yeah.
filling in variables and things for you and giving you back like actual values rather than just streams of text.
Well, look at what one of our guys is doing internally here, and they're doing actually with a customer, for two customers actually. They're building out the progressive graph feature into the product. So we can build this, but they're building it in the product, and it's really interesting. It basically, the more you use the search, the more intelligent the search becomes, because if it finds that it can't find a concept that you've told it about in a prompt, it will prompt the human knowledge manager or information manager to review that and see if it wants to add that concept to the model. Well, the implication of that is the human reviewer could say yes, but we could also send a notification to that specific user. You asked that question 2 minutes ago. It's now available for you. The answer is available for you. So you're not only getting a smarter search, but you can also get a much more agile and service-led search. You are
Yes.
offering a service. Like, when that answer becomes available, suddenly you could say, "Notify that user." because they
Yeah.
might still be looking for the question. They might not have found the answer yet. Um, and that type of service, again, like, there's just so much potential with it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, you could think of it in the concept of, developer documentation, and you're building a knowledge base, but that knowledge base is not just a big wall of text that you manually have to search through, but
Yeah,
you've built a knowledge base um, that is active. Like it's not a passive knowledge base. Like this is
yeah,
something that is improving the results of your search in real time.
yeah, yeah. That's it. It's really interesting. This has been really interesting, and I'd love to come back on again.
Appreciate you coming on and chatting
No
with us
worries
all.
at all. All right, cheers, cheers, Ed.
Take
Thanks
care,
very much.
everyone.